I had a question about the what you just said about reverse engineering your goal. Could you elaborate a little bit more on that, please?
Absolutely. So let's think about this for a second. I'm going to think of an example. I got a great example. Have you guys ever heard of the Dollar Shave Club?
Yes.
What do you know about the Dollar Shave Club?
That it's pretty much like a mail order. You know, you get online, order what you need instead of having to go to the store and get it.
Great point. So let's talk about how that relates to reverse engineering and also to an aspiration. Okay? I wrote about the Dollar Shave Club in the book and in some of the lesson plans because I got inspired by this story. Got inspired by it while I was still in jail. So these guys, there's two guys that were really ticked off because the cost of razors is so high. Are razors pretty expensive there in the jail?
No.
Well, they're expensive out here, like $4 or $5 for these blades with 3 or 4 blades on it and, lubricating gels and all. It's like $4 a blade. And that gets to be expensive. So these two college guys, or relatively young guys, said they wanted to change that industry. But they didn't know how, because they would be fighting a billion-dollar company like Gillette, or the companies that manufacture razors. So they had to reverse engineer how they would start a new business with no money. And so they had to be innovative, just like you have to be innovative. If you want to do something with your life, you've got to figure out, okay, what am I trying to solve? What problem am I trying to solve? And how am I going to get there? Because if you understand the first step, your name again is what?
Brian.
The first step, Brian, is to say, what's the problem that I'm trying to solve? I got to think about it. Okay? These guys wanted to solve a problem because they knew that they did not like paying the high price of razors, and they figured that millions of other people didn't like paying the high price of razors. And so they had to reverse engineer how they would compete against a company like Gillette. And first thing that they did is they went to a white label razor company that made razors without a label on them. And they said, hey, will you manufacture razors for us if we create a marketing company, and will you do it at a lower price? And so they negotiated, first of all, a deal. That was the first step that they had to solve, is they had to get a supply. So they reverse engineered that by going and creating that relationship. Remember, these guys didn't have any money. So they had to figure out, how do I make this idea appealable to somebody else so I can solve his problem? He manufactures white label razors, and I got a problem. I want to start a business, but I don't have any money. He's already got a manufacturing plant. He wants to manufacture more. So I said, hey, if I come up with a way of selling more, will you manufacture them for us? The other guy says, sure, I will. So now they say, well, how are we going to get consumers that want to buy it? Because they can't buy a big inventory. So they created this funny YouTube commercial, and it's really funny. And it's just a guy in front of a camera, but he's talking about, you're tired of seeing razors, you're tired of paying the whole price. So am I. So you don't need this. You don't need to go to the store. We will ship it directly to your house. And so they created this model where people would subscribe through the internet to buy a subscription, just like you buy a subscription to a magazine. And all they did is film the video, which cost them nothing, right? Just a video. Then they put it on YouTube, okay? Which is why I like to bring YouTube into the jail. I'm creating a lot of YouTube content to bring to you guys, okay? And he then had consumers watch it. They said, yeah, I want to do that. They started filling things out, and they started getting orders. Then they took these orders to the manufacturer, said, look, we've got to fulfill these orders, and we got to ship 500 packs of razors every month to these people. And they kept doing it. So he had no money, but he had an idea. And he figured out, how am I going to turn this idea into something real? That's reverse engineering, Brian. You think about success, then you've got to think about the incremental goals you've got to hit along the way. Okay? I have to, first of all, cut a deal with the manufacturer. I then have to create a YouTube commercial. Then I have to learn how to put it on YouTube. then through that process, if it works, people are going to buy this product. And he starts a business with nothing that later he sold for more than $1 billion. So that is an example of reverse engineering. I can give you a personal example of how you and I are talking right now is a product of reverse engineering. Do you want to know how that started?
How's that?
Well, I was sitting where you are, inside of a jail. And I was thinking, I don't want to be in jail for the rest of my life. And I was thinking, how am I going to cause people in society to see me as something different than a guy who sold a lot of cocaine? How am I going to do that? And I had to then think about, who are the people that I'm going to meet in the future? What does that market look like? So I thought about probation officers that would maybe have the discretion to give me liberty. I thought about case managers in prison that might allow me to go to different prisons or recommend me to get out of jail if that was I had no idea, because I was in jail. I didn't even know what prison was like yet. But I started thinking not about my own problems, but rather I started thinking about, what's the broader society need? How am I going to satisfy that market? How am I going to satisfy an employer, a business person, a warden? All these challenges that I'm going to have to overcome. And I started writing. I decided, okay, I've got to focus on education, because I didn't have an education. I've got to develop skills on communication. I've got to learn what the opportunity costs of every decision that I make. And I got to start planting seeds. Just like Jay asked me yesterday about how do I plant seeds? And I reverse engineered it. And then I said, well, if I do that, then that's going to open an opportunity for this. And I'll eventually get into school if I take this path. And then once I get into school, then more people will believe in me. And then I will eventually maybe become an author. And then eventually I'll get hired by a university. And then I may be able to raise capital and go into business. And then I may be able to persuade somebody like Mr. Johnson to bring my course in. Or maybe somebody like you will read a book and you go on my behalf to Mr. Johnson. Hey, we need these courses in here. And so I build it that way. And I can show you how that works in real time. Like I can show you right now. I'm just going to pull up my email, and I'm just going to show you an email that I got just a couple of days ago that says, how does this happen? How do I reverse engineer something like this? So I want to go to CDCR because tomorrow, I think it's tomorrow. Yeah, tomorrow's Friday. God, I can't find it. Oh, here, maybe CDCR. I want to show you how tomorrow I have this meeting. Okay, right here. I'm going to share my screen so you can see it. I hate sharing my screen because it's always kind of tough to see. But you can see my screen right now, right? My mail screen, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So you see this one. I'm trying to show you. This is from the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. And this is the Staff Services Manager, Educational Technology Unit, Director of Rehabilitation. And I've got a call scheduled for him on tomorrow to talk to him about, hey, this is what we need to create with people in prison. Okay? This is the way we change people's behavior in prison, is not only by giving, I think the courses that are inside are really important, but we need people like you, people like Johnny, people like Jay to come into the jail and prison and talk about our experiences. That's how we get more people to understand. Because you probably identified, the only reason I identified with Socrates or Mandela or Malcolm X is because they were in jail and I was in jail. And maybe that's the only reason you're listening to me, because I was in jail. But I guarantee you there are tens of millions of people that want to hear from you and your story and what you've learned from this experience. And if you can relate that, you can help solve problems in society. You can help people from going in there, and you can feel good about yourself. That's an aspiration to pursue, but you got to reverse engineer your way there. You can't just talk about it. You got to see it. You got to architect a plan and a strategy. You got to create your tools and tactics. You got to measure your progress every day. That's how you reverse engineer it. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.